All right. Well, I think we'll get a start here, and if anybody needs to catch up with us, then we'll try and go back if we have to. Um, so I want to welcome everybody to the conversation here. Um, I want to have this be an open, honest conversation. Everybody's opinion is valid. Everybody be respectful of each other. Um, with that being said. I think that certainly we want to provide information for everyone, um, just in general about the process, where we feel that people are at, and there's been a lot of opinions being thrown around over the last week and a half. I know that um, certainly. Uh, there's been a lot of hard feelings even, and of course we don't want that. We want everybody to, everybody still has to live together in this area, so being, absolutely as respectful as we can is the best way to get through this. So that being said, as we met last week on Thursday, when the board was having their meeting. Was that Thursday, Wednesday? And we talked about, some options moving forward, and mainly, the point at this point is just trying to make sure that everybody's informed. We've talked to several of our neighbors who had no idea there was even the rewrite or what the documents meant, or any of that. And so it's we're not specifically giving information on what we think people should think. Um, we're just giving information based on, you need to read them. You need to, if you have questions, feel free to ask one of us who's looked at them. There's a lot of people here who are even smarter than I am, who can put out as much possible information on this process. And I think that that's something that, we all need to help all of our neighbors be able to understand this process. Uh, you know, we have our own, Jonathan and I have our own opinions, as to how we have felt about stuff moving, past grievances that we keep close to our chest. But, we've tried to look at this objectively. We've tried to look at it just from the process of the rules, process of the bylaws, and uh, look at stuff going forward. So some of the things that we have started a process to go with is, um, we have ourselves put together a website, on disbanding the HOA, because that's honestly our view as to where we're going to
Reads in here.
the best bang for buck. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, he's live right now. I know.
let me hang on a sec. There we go. Okay. So part of what our drive is, the processes in the past have been fraught with, taking a very, very long time to pass an amendment. A lot of that comes down to involvement of people in the neighborhood. People don't want to go to the annual meetings. They don't want to be involved in the process. I would be willing to bet there's a large portion who probably don't, communicate in any way, shape, or form with each other or with the board. They may not have even ever read their CCNRs that are in existence at this point. And so for us, communicating about that is something that we feel is very important to us. We think that everybody needs to be educated on the possibilities of all options, and needs to be open to the possibilities of all options. Um, in our case, we feel that spending and money constantly, and in the next year of our existence as a neighborhood, fighting through these rewrite processes over and over to get something that you would get enough percentage of people to pass is something that's fraught with a lot of risk. Um, this is one of those things that certainly, we could have money thrown after money after, money to attorneys and never reach a consensus on how everybody feels about the process and moving forward, how to best utilize that. So for, John and I's personal opinion, and this seems to be mirrored by a lot of people, we feel that the best use of time and resources would be to disband the HOA. That, there are some frightening logistics with that. I have directly asked the board members to see if they can answer the question of, can we get a rundown as to what rules and regulations are already covered by another city, state, or federal code, so that as we are moving forward in this process, we know what to expect. We know, that, okay, if we go through this, then this is where we're going to be. With that being said, I have spent the last, week communicating with people like real estate agents and other sources. And one of the things that I'm hearing, and we heard it over and over in last week's meeting, I've heard it over and over again on Facebook, is that in general, people didn't want to buy in an HOA. I would assume that that's probably the vast majority of you. You didn't want to buy in an HOA to begin with, but trying to find a home that's in this quality, this age range, this price range, there just is nothing available. The inventory doesn't exist for, that many homes to be out there on the market. And as I've spoken with realtors and asked the question, what's the very real impact of HOA versus non-HOA? And the response that I've gotten is, realistically, you're not going to see a financial impact on homes in the neighborhood directly as a result of that. However, because the neighborhood would then be HOA or non-HOA, the neighborhood would then be more desirable to people who are looking, who want that as part of their life. They don't want to buy in an HOA. They don't want to have to deal with those problems. And so then the desirability means houses sell faster. Houses selling faster means prices go up. So, the long-term net result would be increased property values. There is a risk that comes with that. And the risk is, that there could be a home or two in the neighborhood that could fall, to a substandard level. But there are a few homes in the neighborhood that are probably deficient in terms of the way that they are in terms of either appearance or maintenance or any of those things. So, that's one of those facts that I wanted to share as I've been working on this. Additionally, we today put up a banner in front of our home that advertises our website, DisbandTheHOA.com. It's not meant as a personal slight on our board members or anything of that. It is just our opinion. But that website we are using to to help be able to share resources for people who need information and want to be able to try and find information, find the Facebook groups, find a change.org petition that is circulating, and also a direct link to be able to mail to our board from that site. So that's one of those things that we've done as an effort to try and make this situation, the best as possible for everyone. So that's kind of been our process has been, we've developed that website and wanted to share that out with everyone. Um, I've had a few people request, whether, you know, on there are people who live near the main entrances or what, to put a banner similar to that on their property. And the long and short of it is the banners, yes, we can do. A cheaper option would even be to do some sort of a yard sign. I'm a firm believer in the more that we get people to at least ask the question, even if they are of a different opinion, if they at least ask the question about, wait a minute, there's a movement to disband why is there a movement to disband the HOA? What triggered this? And then they start looking back and maybe find that email that they didn't see that got into their spam filtering, you know, things like that. Um, I know that I've spent, you know, a fair amount of time talking with other homeowners in the neighborhood, and in general, I think there has been a level of frustration for a long while. I think that it just has ramped up to 11 at this point. Um, and again, I think that people just are feeling like, you know, that frustration level is just, okay, where do we go from here? I know I did see, believe at least one of our board members is here. Um, so if you don't mind, I see Reed is here. Reed, would you mind just giving a brief update as to any feedback from the process as it's moving forward? I know that there's the town hall coming on the 18th, and the deadline for sending in feedback is the 11th. Is there anything else that the board would like us to know, or is there any feedback you have directly?
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yep. You're on, Reed. You're good.
Okay. So the feedback has been really good. We've mostly gotten feedback from people who are not happy with the proposed changes. So we're taking that all very serious. We're looking at it. We found that we left some things in that were not meant to be in there, that because we did start with a template that's used for all HOAs, that some of the things do not apply to us. And because of feedback, we caught those mistakes, and we'll be removing those. But the feedback has been good, and it's helped us move in a direction that we think will produce some CCNRs that everybody can get behind and be happy with. I agree with you. That's going to be a difficult process because we've got so many homeowners, 600 opinions, but we feel like we can make that happen. So we're looking forward to the town hall and answering all the questions that to the entire group that have come in and trying to clear up misunderstandings and misinformation. And so that's kind of where we are right now. And we're looking forward to meeting with everybody that will be there on a week from Thursday to participate in that.
Hey, Reed, can you give us an example of a few of those things that that was brought to light that supposedly shouldn't have been in there?
Sure. The main one, the one that a lot of people were upset about, was the entering somebody's property with 48-hour notice. And that was meant for condominiums and places where landscaping is common. If you were living in a condominium and you had landscape water lines running through your property and there were issues with the landscaping, then somebody would need to enter that property with or without permission and get it fixed. And so that's where that line item came from, and that does not apply to our community. And actually, we thought we had struck that from the document before it got sent out, and somehow that was just missed. That was never intended to be left in there. And so that was a item that a lot of people were upset about, and it should never have even been in there. So
I appreciate that input, Reed. That you know, that was. I'm glad that you were here to be able to at least kind of give that update for us, because that's, um, I guess, some feedback for the board members in general. Um, it's almost felt like for the last week and a half, kind of like the neighborhood was almost left out to dry. It was here's the proposal, and we'll see you on the 18th.
I have been watching the emails, and I think that pretty much everybody who commented to the board, who emailed a comment and got a response from somebody on the board. I can't say that was 100%, but man, I saw a lot of responses from our board president or from other members of the board to people who had emailed their comments in. Another item that was a big issue was the working from home or having a home business. And that's just a very straight up misunderstanding, because our current CCRs say that you cannot have a home business. And that was one of the main reasons we wanted to rewrite, was to change that. And the new wording says that you can have a home business without the consent or the of the Architectural Control Committee or the HOA. And people must be misreading that one, because we actually are reversing that to allow people to have a home business as long as they follow the city ordinances. And I don't know why people misread that, or somebody put out some misinformation on that and got a lot of people upset about that. And in truth, we're trying to make it so that you can have a home business as long as you follow city ordinances.
Could I make a comment concerning that for a second? It has felt, well, from my observation, it feels like there's three different conversations going on, because you have the board email, which is kind of private one-on-one type stuff, and that's nice, but anything kind of communicated over that is only going to one person. And then you have like the HOA, the discussions group that Stan set up, and then you have the Jordan Willow's neighborhood page, and and the coverage between those two doesn't, I don't think, begin to get the entire neighborhood, but it seems like that most of the fire is taking place, or maybe misinformation is taking place on Facebook, and I've only ever seen Stan engaged maybe a little bit, and so there's been I find Facebook to be maybe more inflammatory than anything recently, but is there a better way to disseminate some of this stuff all at once? Because I think the points you brought up, Reed, were great, and I think that getting that out early in mass somehow maybe would have allayed some of these explosions, for lack of a better word. I don't know. Do you see what or can you see what I'm seeing? Am I not seeing this situation correctly?
Well, I absolutely agree that Facebook can explode and turn things bad really quickly. I'm not a Facebooker. I don't even have a Facebook account, so that's not something that I follow. So we have struggled getting notices and information out to our homeowners currently our best way of doing that is by email. And so many of our homeowners have been reluctant to share their email with the HOA so that we can disseminate information that way. Since this has been going on, we've had dozens of people that have emailed in and said, hey, add us to the email list. We're not getting information. And that's unfortunate that it's taken something like this to get people to get on the email list so that they can receive the information. But and then if we don't have it, somebody's email, then we have to send any communication out by snail mail, which we do, but it takes so long, you know, and by the time somebody receives that information in the mail, Facebook is already blown up and so much other information has been shared that's not accurate. And so it is a problem, and we need to figure out how to better disseminate information and all at the same time.
Well, if I may, Reed, I mean, that's been the Achilles heel to the neighborhood for, you know, at least what, the last 4 or 5 years. I know when John and I first moved in, there was the physical newsletter that went out, and then the newsletter went away, and then it was we're going to use Facebook, and then Facebook went away, you know, then it was the email list, and it's it's the constant changeover in that process. And you're right, Facebook is not the ideal situation. You know, this has kind of been one of those circumstances. You know, I've made it known in a few of the Facebook groups, and I will certainly make it known here. You know, at one time, John and I had offered at no cost to the HOA to set up a website for the HOA that could provide the very link that people had clamored for here. We even have the domain of jordanwillowshoa.com. Those were on the open market. We originally snagged them to protect them. And at the same time, we also made the offer to the board at the time to go ahead and restart essentially doing the physical newsletter quarterly. And again, at no cost to the HOA other than perhaps postage. We were more than happy to pay for, I have all the design software. We were more than happy to pay for the effort behind it, you know, the paper, the toner, all of that stuff, because we felt that was a need in the neighborhood. And I know we've spoken with Reed about this recently, and the response was, there was not even a yes or no to us. It was a full on just ignore the situation, and it went away. And that was very frustrating to us. And after that got offered a second time and we got ignored a second time, we were pretty much like, well, we're out of that then. Whereas, as you know, a source like that would have been something that certainly could have helped in this situation for certain and other situations, to allow our neighbors to communicate in a method where they're, you know, they're communicating only with their other direct neighbor, you know, with their neighbors, people within the HOA itself. Additionally, you know, the doing some of the various events, things like that. People, if they don't know the events are going on, they don't know where to go, what to do, and especially now with COVID, I think that communication was even more needed. I'm sure John will agree with me. You know, it was much more needed because we're all, you know, even if we're going to work, we're still working within a bubble, so to speak. And people are feeling, you know, we need our neighbors more than anything at this point. And so that's kind of where we've made that push towards, you know, as I circle back here, you know, John and I's feeling of the frustration of the process, and part of, as we, Reed mentioned too, it's the trying to get any kind of amendment passed in this neighborhood is an act of Congress times 10, because at least with Congress, you can lock them all up in a room and make them eventually come out with something. Whereas you get 634 homes and everybody has their own opinion. And there's going to be, even on this topic, there's a lot of people on both sides. And I know that that's made it a very tough and very brutal situation for a lot of people. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, um, and it's not to say that it's not misplaced. I mean, people feel that way for whatever reason they do, and it certainly is a very valid, um, very, very valid opinion to feel that way. And there's people who are very, I'm sure, still, no matter what, pro HOA, who are, probably looking at the rest of us like, we're completely crazy, or, any of that. But, moving forward, I think that I want to see all of our neighbors be able to know what's going on, and have that transparency level, uh, not just within the side that would like to see the HOA disband, but also within the side, within the board, I would just like to be able to see all of our neighbors communicate with each other fully, and not feel like it's a, no, oh, hey, are you a Democrat, or are you a Republican, or are you Mormon, or are you not Mormon, or are you, there shouldn't be any of those labels to it. It shouldn't be an anti-HOA or a pro-HOA. Everybody's opinion is valid, and that's the biggest takeaway. As far as moving forward, um, I still feel like, and I appreciate your feedback, Reed. I still feel like, we need to have the effort to, share with all of our neighbors, and and let them make their own opinion, but let it be an educated opinion. And if the facts bear out that people want the HOA to go away, then if enough people will vote for it to go away. It's really that simple. Um, I know that there's a lot more technical aspect that goes into it, but if the will of the people is for it to stay, and we find some way to settle on CCNRs and make everything happy, then great. If the will of the people is, that we disband and move forward as a regular neighborhood without the restrictions, then great. I just want to see everybody be able to have that voice, and that's been one of the most important things to me across the board.
Hey, Brandon, can I jump in really quick?
Absolutely, Casey.
Just with you touching on, it's as simple as that. If we have the votes to disband, we have the votes. Do we know what percentage that is at this point? Like, what will it take percentage wise to disband? Do we know that answer?
So as far as I am aware, in this case, it is simply making an amendment to disband the HOA. It would be a 67% majority requirement, similar to passing a standard amendment. I have not been able to, I've heard people say 80%. I've even heard somebody say 90%. I have not been able to find anything at all whatsoever in any of the corporate records, as far as that it would take that to disband. I know that it does take that 67% supermajority for sure. And typically the process would be, if it was the homeowners coming to the board, we would have to have a 30% of the voting interest to call for a special meeting, at which point then a 10% quorum, which is 64 votes itself, would be needed to essentially start the amendment process. at that point, then it's would look very similar to our fence amendment in the past where, you know, it took some time to gather signatures, but it eventually got done. You know, so that's one of those numbers. If you think about 30% of our neighborhood, that's, you know, it's a little less than a third. It's, I would say, right at what, 200? Does that sound right? Without having my calculator handy. I'm sure John's pulling it up right now and doing it.
634 homes, 30% is 190.
There you go. That's what I keep him around for. But so 190 homes, you know, being able to make that call of a special meeting, assuming that were needed. If the board were, you know, pushing pushing this forward to disband without requiring a special meeting, then, you know, we still have to reach that 67%, you know, super majority, but it doesn't require that extra step of a special meeting. Does that answer your question, Casey?
It does, and I would love to just ask just one, well, maybe a couple more, but I know at one point, I think it might have been you mentioned in one of the messages on one of the platforms, whatever it was, that we were trying to get the email list from the HOA for our community. Where do we stand on that? Are they offering that up? I thought that would probably be like pulling teeth, but where are we at with that?
Sure. So as of Thursday, so this being Tuesday, and since Julie Pettit is not here to being able to share with us, her husband, Nathan, I believe it is, was going to reach out to Parker Brown to get the list. I had spoken directly with Stan Rasmussen late last week, and he basically told me it should not be a problem to get the list from Parker Brown. If we were asking for confidential information, it would be a different story. But the address, you know, particularly the names and addresses is all public record that you could go to the county and get if we had to. I have not talked to Julie in the last 2 days to know if they've had any success. I would assume they didn't. He wasn't going to reach out until Friday, and Super Bowl weekend, you know, I highly doubt anybody was really paying attention at Parker Brown, as far as that didn't even get seen until probably today, you know, maybe yesterday or today. But I don't know how long it takes them to process that request and then get that disseminated. I'm hoping we have it very soon.
Sure.
I sent an email a week ago asking them for mailing addresses, and they haven't responded back to me at all. They typically don't respond within a week.
Okay.
Is that not something that a board member could help us with? Like, Reed, is that not something that you could get for us? I would assume a board member might have that available to them.
It shouldn't be secret.
I do not have access to that. I know that request has been turned over to the management company who asked, I think that we asked the lawyer what the implications of that would be. The policy is that we don't hand that out to just anybody, obviously, because people could use that information for a lot of different things. So I know that somebody is checking on that to make sure that it's okay to share that. And if it is, then it will be shared with whoever it was that was asking for it.
Well, failing them giving us a list, we could canvass the neighborhood with flyers just on every door that says, you know, this is what we're trying to do, and we'd like to ask you to participate. And if you can't be there in person, we'd like to get your proxy so that we can all vote as a quorum.
And that's certainly a possibility.
And I think also with that request, it's more of, it's kind of the physical addresses and names attached to the property. And some people may have been also trying to ask for emails associated with the names at the property. Again, names associated with the property and physical address are all public record.
So when we did, when they did the amendment for the fences, they came around with addresses and names and had a whole list of everybody that was involved in, or that lives in our neighborhood. So how do we get that list? Is that the Parker Brown list? Is that, I know it was Reed's daughter, Amberly, that we spoke with. She had that access.
But that's probably something you could pull from county records.
Correct. Yeah, that particular list is quite literally, I would be honestly willing to bet you could walk into the county office and say, I need the physical mailing address and the name of the property owner for each lot in Jordan Willows plats this through this, and get that part of it. That's, again, you can go on to utahcounty.gov, pull up their GIS thing and click through the neighborhood and see who owns each house. That stuff's all public record. I do agree, John. I think that it was probably the more contentious portion of that would be the email addresses.
I'd rather not wait on Parker Brown. I don't have a lot of confidence in their ability to get back to us in a timely manner. If we want to do something, I would recommend that we go ahead and compile that list and put together a plan of action to start canvassing.
Absolutely. And honestly, to tell you the truth, with any movement to go forward with a disbandment of the HOA, let's honestly face it, Parker Brown has an extreme conflict of interest.
Yeah.
You know, our biggest thing is though, is, you know, we want to make sure that we're representing to our neighbors, you know, that they do have a vote, and it's not just about getting them to vote against, you know, for disbandment, but it's also getting them to vote against disbandment if that's what they want. I would love to see 634 votes recorded and be able to have an honest, true accounting at the end of this process, whatever it ends up being, and know that everybody did their best to make sure that we represented the best wants and needs for this entire neighborhood.
Just another question, and maybe this one is more for Reed. And sorry for all the questions. I wasn't able to be on the last one, so some of these were probably asked. But I'd love to know, you know, what brought up the whole revising the CC&Rs. What made us want to go and do that for such a minimalist HOA? Like, I don't see it being necessary. So I'm just curious, like, who brought that up? Where did it come from?
So I haven't been involved in all of that, but from what I understand, so some of it I have direct knowledge of. As an HOA, if we are not enforcing all of the CC&Rs, then we are liable for being sued or prosecution or whatever. And so the idea was to bring the CC&Rs in line with what our community wants. For instance, not enforcing having a home business. If we know about somebody who has a home business and we don't enforce it and shut it down, that opens up the HOA to liability. And so the idea was to get the CC&Rs in line with something that as a community we felt like could be enforced. That's why we changed the fence one, because we had so many people with fence violations, and if we didn't go around and make everybody tear those fences out, there was some serious liability issues. And so that's the main reason that the rewrite, and also because the original CCNRs were written by the builders, and they weren't necessarily in the best interest of homeowners.
I just feel like that should have been something that was voted on itself, right? Like, hey, do we think we need to completely rewrite these? Because obviously rewriting these, it opens the door for all these other rules that we don't think we really necessarily need. So why wouldn't we vote on wanting to rewrite all these first and see if it's something that we all wanted to go through the headache of doing in the first place?
And hiring an attorney or a law firm to help with that already.
Well, I know I can speak to, so those who were there at the annual meeting last, I think it was February, this topic did come up, and a fair amount of time was actually devoted to it, about talking about bringing us more in line with the current trends of the neighborhood. There were a lot of issues. For example, I can give another one that Reed didn't. When D.R. Horton came in and built the other homes in the back of phase 2, the problem was D.R. Horton offered colors that would not have been acceptable under the current CCNR design guidelines from Fieldstone. So unfortunately, their choice made that whole section of that little portion of the document be to where anybody could go and say, oh, well, see, that house over there is red. I want purple, or I want pink, or I want unicorn, or whatever color I wanted, and have a legitimate gripe as to, being able to try and sue the HOA itself. And then that winds up being a process that would have probably resulted in the destruction of the HOA in a not so nice way, without any say whatsoever happened to it, because the litigation would have probably been so expensive it would have depleted reserves, would have depleted any special assessments that could have been offered, and all of that. One other thing that I do want to note, I've spoken with several people regarding just in general, in fact, one today that I talked with, about CCNRs in general with an HOA. Ours have not been, other than the two corrections, the fence addendum and the animal addendum, nothing else has been changed in our documents since, I believe, 2003 or 2007. I was told quite literally, these should be a living document. If you go 5 to 7 years without having made any kind of changes to your documentation as an HOA, you have gone way too long. That means that there's probably something wrong in that's just not getting addressed, because of, there's no way that you could go 5 or 7 years, just even looking at it from the technological aspect, and have yourself something written today that's going to cover the neighborhood 5 to 7 years out, or 10 years out, or 15 or 20 years out. We don't know what technologies are going to change. Maybe all of a sudden any restrictions on putting satellite dishes on the roof will come back, because we're all going to have some sort of, fancy Wi-Fi television thing that beams directly from the studio directly to your TV, with no need for any technology in between of it. We just can't know what those things are going to be in the future. So that's a big part of it, is past boards, going back even from, say, 2008, 2009, 2010, kind of did a disservice to the neighborhood in general by not looking at things and then going from that forward, and then saying, okay, let's fix that now. So there is that.
Okay, that all makes sense. That fair enough. Like things do change, like you said, technology and the circumstance with DR Horton or whatever. And you're right. We should be reviewing this every 5 years or so to stay ahead of those things. But it only makes sense to me to change those things that arise and make those amendments. But at the same time, when we go through a whole rewrite like this, I think we could have avoided a lot of these miscommunication issues and people jumping to conclusions on some things if they would have sent this out, because I think we would all agree that they kind of feels like they try to do this very passively and kind of sneaky. But when they put this out, why wouldn't they just put together a summary of, okay, here's the changes that we made, or here's the addition to all of this or whatever, so that we don't have to go through this whole, jump into conclusions or whatever. Because when it came out, I simply asked him, hey, can you do a summary for us all? We don't have the time nor the desire to compare it side by side. And there wasn't a single email responded back to me. And then you go on top of that and see all these changes, and it just makes everyone feel like, gosh, yeah, these guys really tried to pull a fast one.
Pretty shady.
Well, and some of that comes down to, there are some processes there that just unfortunately kind of caught everybody unaware, and there's no easy way to release it across the board. I do agree. I would love to have seen a summary version, or what's referred to as a red line document. The problem is that they essentially, the attorneys, when they gave this proposed version back to the board, the attorneys, instead of trying to take our existing CCNRs, take out the few things that didn't work, put new stuff in to fix, to address other things, and then just give us that modified document as a guideline, and then work from that. Basically took our existing CCNRs, just threw them in the trash can and started over with a boilerplate template. And so any attempts to make a direct comparison of sentence from sentence, or section from section, is one of those things that even I would be willing to bet the attorneys couldn't do without spending tens of thousands of dollars on it. It is a nightmare of a scenario to try and even pile through that. And I feel bad because it's, everybody here wants to know, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And the only thing I can tell people is read them, ask questions. If you don't know what a section is, just kind of ask around, and don't take one opinion on a line item for that's the fact, because I'm sure Reed, and I'm sure Stan, and I'm sure Jason Moss, and all of the people would agree that each person can take a line of text and read it and get a different inferred opinion of it. And that's so much of the problem going forward, trying to untangle all of this. And it's one of those things that I honestly have no idea. I know John just messaged me, and he had the dates on when those original documents were done.
So the CCNRs were November 21st of 2003 for the recording date. The original bylaws, April 12th of 2007. Articles of Incorporation, April 12th of 2007. Amended bylaws were May 15th of, looks like 2014. If you have not reviewed those or need to know where to find them, they were originally posted on the Google Drive that the HOA board manages. Those were downloaded and re-uploaded to the website DisbandTheHOA.com under the documents page. So multiple places to get them. If you have questions, feel free to let us know.
That's great. Do you guys that kind of spearheaded this thing, thank you, first of all. I think your guys' communication with the board has been probably the most. Do you guys have their temperature on this whole rewrite thing at all? Are they all pretty much in agreement? Because I just feel like a company like Parker Brown, that this is what a lot of what they do, right? So I think they knew exactly when we went into this whole thing that we're going to throw them in the trash and we're going to start all the way over with kind of a cookie cutter coverall thing, and they know exactly what's in there and didn't care to take some out. And I think that it was probably because, you know, there's certain things in there that would benefit them. I don't think they're dumb as a company. So I think that should all alarm us. And I would love to know what the board's take is on it.
Well, we've got, we have Reed here for sure. I know originally that Stan Rasmussen was hoping to be here. I see Tim Carter's got a hand up real quick too. Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, no, sorry. That was just an applause. I was agreeing with what he just said. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, I know that it's going to depend on, I know Jonathan and I have had our own issues with the board. Granted, now when our most recent issue happened, 3 of the people who are on the current board were not on the current board, and so that has some of our venting frustrations have been spillover from what happened, with some of the prior board members. But I think that some of the board members are trying to be, from what I can see at least, are trying to be pretty measured and withdrawn and just go, okay, let's just try and ride the wave. Let's get the feedback into, to the email. Let's try and get that information, and then we'll try and address it all in one fell swoop on the 18th. I know that Stan Rasmussen and Jason Moss have certainly been more active on Facebook, at least. I know Stan has been significantly more active in just in general, trying to share, whatever information he has, which is, within what he can share, at least as of this point. And that's certainly been, I know, for a lot of people, a lot of the frustration is it feels like there's just nothing coming out of the board. And I can assure you there is some of it coming out of the board. It's just the sources, and some of it is, I have things that, I've conversed directly with certain board members, and, I've got things that I can say and things that I can't say. And, the things that I can't say are not malicious, or they're not any of that. They're more of a personal nature that, are things that I can't share with the group. They're not anything that directly impacts the efforts to change the CCNRs or disband the HOA. But I think, in general, I think moving forward, I think we need to, those of us who feel like, we want to maybe see it, the HOA go away, I think our best bet is to continue, as Dan said, a public information campaign. Again, we want people to be educated. We want people to, I would hate to see anybody go up and say, oh, well, if you're not going to vote, give me your proxy. And then the proxy run counter to what the person would have wanted. And that's always, I know that's always a risk with proxy votes, but that is something, that, look, I have no control over anybody else anywhere, but you know, it's one of those things that I kind of like, well, you know, I would love to see everybody just try and do everything with a measure of respect.
We just got a question in on the chat. Is there a reason that when asked on Facebook who is on the board, no one will say via the Jordan Willow HOA group?
Okay, that information is on the Jordan Willows HOA, the official website or the official Facebook group for the HOA. All 5 members, which is Chris Martin, and then Derek Farnes, Reed Hassan, Stan Rasmussen, and Jason Moss are your 5 board members. That is posted on there. It's on the, I believe, the left-hand side when you're looking at the page or the about page for that group, if I'm correct.
And just sake of clarification, the question was on Jordan Willow's HOA group. Again, when we first moved into the neighborhood, there was always a lot of confusion. Which is the active, you know, official? Is it the official page? Is it an official group? There's the Jordan Willows HOA or Jordan Willows JW Neighborhood Friends. There's the Jordan Willows HOA discussions, and there's the Jordan Willows HOA Facebook page. The first 2 are groups. The last one is an actual page. Those names are listed on the HOA page.
Okay. So,
Brandon?
Yeah.
Brandon?
Yes, sir.
Can I back up and give some clarification on the comment that was said? I don't know who it was that said. I want to give you kind of a layout on who all's involved in this CCNR rewrite. So Parker Brown is not involved at all in the CCNRs. We used a lawyer who, this is what she does. She does HOA law work. That's what she does. Parker Brown's involvement was just in sending it out at the board's request. We asked Parker Brown to send it out and share it with all of the homeowners. And we recognize, unfortunately, that we did not do that in a manner that was proper. We should have given some heads up that it was coming. It kind of came out kind of a cold. Came out cold instead of with some information letting the owners know that it was coming. We kind of sprung it on everybody, I guess I should say. And that is something that we recognize that we failed at, and we should have done that differently. But Parker Brown has no interest in the CCNRs. They have nothing to gain. Parker Brown is simply a tool that our HOA uses to administer the CCNRs and to disseminate information to our homeowners. So they have no interest, nothing to gain from these CCNRs, nothing to lose. The only thing they have to lose is if they don't do their job and do what we ask them to do. And then, so that's it.
Thank you, Reed. So yeah. So going forward, I do, and I thank everybody for the questions. Yeah, that's one of those. Hang on, I've got a question. Let me see. Okay, so the question essentially comes down to if certain things that are in our CCNRs are covered by the city ordinances, and if they are, why keep them in the CCNRs? That is kind of been the point of contention for a lot of people who would love to see the HOA just go away, is so much of of what is covered already in our CCNRs is covered in the Lehigh City codes, in the Utah state codes, or in federal codes. And that's been one of those things that has been feedback, I know for sure, from several pieces of feedback I have seen shared with me from a few other people to the HOA, that, you know, that they've sent me wanting me to look at or read or whatever it was before they submitted. And that's a pretty common one, is, you know, if this, you know, particular thing is covered under Lehigh City Code this, such as the animal section. If it's covered under Lehigh City, why do we need a whole big section covering animals instead of one line item that says, you know, because you could literally have one line item in the CCNR documents that says, you know, anything that is not explicitly granted in this document is, you know, your current local, state, and federal laws will be applicable. That is kind of a standard bailout typically for those kinds of documents. And that would essentially then put the onus on whoever it is, the homeowner, to go and say, well, I want to put a chicken coop. Okay, well, my HOA doesn't restrict it, but what does the city restrict it? Or what is the state code? Or what is the federal code on that? That certainly is something that's been part of my direct feedback as well. Additionally, I think that it's one of those, I've asked the question because I don't have a true answer on this, and that is, moving forward, how much of what is in our, you know, the proposed CCNRs or our existing CCNRs, you know, what things would we be missing out on coverage wise as we go forward if we were to disband? If there's, you know, is there some magical line item in our current CCNRs that's been protecting us all this time that wouldn't happen any other way, to where we have to retain a, you know, an HOA to genuinely protect ourselves? I have not heard where anybody has been able to make heads or tails of that particular information. I submitted that request just yesterday to the board, and I'm sure that that's probably being run up the flagpole in terms of communication with the attorney of what things are covered, what things aren't covered, and how do we go forward from that point. And I'm sure, you know, that's one of those things we will know more going forward. I know that was in my feedback, though, for sure, with regards to, you know, the HOA itself. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. So that's, you know, we've got that going forward. And I think that it's one of those, so kind of the place that we're at now. Certainly I want everybody to continue to share your feedback with the HOA itself. You know, your feedback could simply be the thing that makes a difference in the board. Maybe going, okay, the support is there to just disband. Let's just, because, you know, the board members don't want to waste any of our money, because let's face it, you know, all of that, those reserves, all of those assets, that belongs to all homeowners. And they don't want to just be willy-nilly wasting that money in an effort to continually rewrite and rewrite and rewrite if there's evidence that there would be no support for it. So, you know, communication is, you know, key for this, for sure. And then beyond that, you know, we need to be able to communicate with our neighbors, so that, you know, that's going to come down to doing the flyers. I know if you on, there is a Jordan Willows, I couldn't think of anything to call it other than Take Back the Neighborhood Facebook group, which some of you may or may not have seen. Search it, you know, join the conversation there. I feel like that particular, you know, the discussions group tends to also want to, you know, have other conversations other than just this. And so, you know, the Take Back the Neighborhood group, that one, I have no problems with that being exclusively about, you know, the CCNR rewrites and all of this. So, you know, going from there. Let's see, next question is, in the reading of the proposed CCNRs, stated that if we don't pay our fees, fines, or penalties, they could foreclose on us instead of just collecting our fee. That is one that I would throw off to either Stan or Reed. So if you guys can see the question in the chat box, it stated that if we don't pay our fees, fines, or penalties, the HOA could foreclose on us instead of just collecting or filing a lien. Is that a mistake as well? Reed or Stan?
Okay, so that is not a mistake. However, that is a state statute that an HOA can foreclose on a property when fees and fines are not paid. So we could take that out of the CCNRs and it would still exist in state statute. Our thought in putting it in the CCNRs is to make it known that's there. Now, having said that, the current board as it sits is committed, and we've talked about this, that we would never do that. But that right, like, I don't know if it's called a right, but that legally can be done, and that's a state statute. Has nothing to do with whether or not we put it in the CCNRs.
Thank you, Reed. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Reed. Let me also ask a question towards you, Reed. You and I both know what the answer is. Again, keep it short and sweet, yes or no answer. Has the HOA ever foreclosed on a home before? Yes,
that was long before I moved into this neighborhood. And that is one of the reasons that we are committed to never let that happen again, because that was such an awful thing for our community and for that person. So I know that wasn't yes or no, but yes, it has happened.
You kept it to the level that I was wanting. Again, you know, because of that situation, that individual deserves some right of privacy. So I appreciate you respecting that.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions, and then because I know we're running up on, you know, an hour and 15 minutes here, we'll try and kind of get to where we're at as far as a plan of action going forward. I did have a question of, does Parker Brown collect any money from the violations of CCNRs within the neighborhood, or does the HOA collect those fines? Parker Brown makes no money on us. Parker Brown is paid a contract rate, which is something in the neighborhood of, if I Reed would probably be able to know for sure, but I would say somewhere in that $15,000, $16,000 range, period. It's a flat contract rate, and it doesn't matter how many violations they write or any of that. The fines go into, they're called, oh gosh, I can't remember the exact terminology in the old CCNRs, but they're basically an assessment that happens against your account, and that is, you know, that money is included with our budget each year, whatever the prior year's assessments were. Am I correct on that, Reed?
Absolutely correct that Parker Brown doesn't make anything. It seems like their contract is $1,800 a month. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the number. And that's all they get. They don't get paid anything more than that. The assessments and the fines, I believe, are dictated by state statutes, how we handle those monies, but they do go to the interest of of the HOA. That's where those monies go.
Awesome. Thank you, Reed. Okay, yeah, Stan just chimed in, 1,500 per month, 18,000 per year. So they're getting that fixed amount, and it is irrespective of how many fines they write. They could write 0 or they could write, 100 a month, and that's, that they're making the same money. So and I know I wanted to just share this little bit of information as well. I've spoken with board members in the past, and one of the things that's come up is the complexity of the job. We pay $18,000 a year to a company that has multi-million-dollar contracts all over the place, and then expect them to drive through our neighborhood and police our neighborhood, and then a lot of the issues come because we've changed management companies 3 times in the last 5 years. A lot of those issues have happened, and it sucks. Everybody gets frustrated when they get, one weed in their yard and they get written up for it. And, that's been a big part of the problem. Going forward, I will also say that when I spoke with my real estate agent yesterday, one of the things that she said, she asked, well, who is our management company, currently? And I told her, and she didn't have to even say a word. She gave a little snort of derision like, oh, those people. And it's the, when I've spoken with board members before and said, well, there's got to be tons of property management companies that are better than what we have. And the problem is, no, that is a big, huge part of this problem is we have such a small budget each year to cover these things. If everybody pays their dues, the actual number is 25,360. If we're paying out 18,000 of that to a management company, you can pretty well do the math. That leaves $7,000 for operating expenses for everything else that the HOA does in the course of a year, which, 7,000, some people will say, well, that's a lot. And it sure seems like it would be. But then when you start to think about, putting on the, just the annual meeting costs, several $1,000s probably, because they have to produce all the materials and get the space and have all of those other things available. And pretty soon, it starts to go, okay, well, there's these other things that we'd love to see, but there's just no way financially to do them. So that being said, that's something that I think also plays into the advantage of pushing towards disbanding, is that I feel like, it's going to be almost impossible to reach that 67% of people who are going to be happy with any CCNR. I mean, it's kind of always been if I had to, just from the people I've met before all of this blew up, I would say it seems like 30 to 40% were already at that point of they didn't want an HOA. They would have just been happy for the HOA to go away because they didn't feel like they got anything out of it. And that's a big number before you add in this, the way that this all went down as far as the mistakes that were made and just the way the information was disseminated. So, but, going forward, I think that that's one of those things of, yeah, we certainly should try to do our best to communicate. So, in light of that, so I know a few people have probably driven by our house on Oak Crest already and seen the banner out front. There's also a picture of it on 1 or 2 of the Facebook groups. So we paid for that out of our pocket because we wanted to, spark that discussion about what's the way to go here. And when the group that I met with that John and I met with on Thursday, which I'm not even sure there's anybody in this group that was here on Thursday. It looks like a completely different group as far as I can see very quickly. Um, but there was some questions about when we had mentioned that we had ordered this particular banner, had this made. Oh, well, can we put them by the entrances? And it's like, well, if you can get the people who own the lots near the entrances that want to do it, and several people have said, yeah, they would absolutely put a sign in their yard. So I started doing some checking and going forward with some of that. And we can have signs printed. Um, if we were to do them in bigger bulk, the cost goes down per sign. I know in the last group on Thursday, people were kind of saying, you know, well, can I contribute to help pay for this or pay for that or pay for printed materials or this or that. And we've kind of held off at the moment and said, you know, let's get to the next couple of days. Let's you know, push this out a few days and let's see where we're at. But if we were to order, you know, so people can understand what the costs would be, if we were to order the smaller yard signs, think of like the realtor signs that are the low profile ones that sit lower to the ground in somebody's yard, double-sided, with the metal wire stand legs, $10.50 each, including shipping. But we'd have to order 100 of them to get that pricing. If you order them individually, they're more like $30 a piece. So by ordering stuff in bulk, that becomes a, you know, something that can make a big change in the way that things are done. Do we have enough people who would be interested in putting a yard sign to order 100 of them? That I don't know. That's kind of my next call to action over the next few days throughout the various groups where I'm, you know, been communicating, and as well as on our website. As far as going forth, you know, yeah, we definitely need to get the, you know, all of the information of who owns the homes. Um, you know, even if that's just a physical mail address, and if we need to go to the county to get that, then I think that's kind of for that step. I know somebody suggested perhaps writing a letter and mailing it to each owner's contact address with a self-addressed stamped envelope, proxy form, some, you know, stuff like that. And I think that that's not a bad way to go forward. I would say, you know, we want to make sure that we make appropriate decisions on content for, you know, for a forum, because we want it to be, again, respectful. We want it to be, make sure that every, you know, we're not having somebody open up an envelope and go, you know, well, what the hell is this? And, you know, disband the HOA, oh, they can, you know, burn in hell, and, you know, start a cross rumble that we don't need. This is that circumstance where we need all of our homeowners to be united in any way, shape, or form that we can be. And and I know the question was, can we set a goal date by which we can reasonably expect to garner enough votes? I don't know. My biggest thing with that, Dan, would be I would love to have a goal date. I don't know where we're at percentage wise at this point, and without, you know, this has happened to be such a quick process that you know, absolutely. I think that, you know, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, see where they're at. You know, I can tell you where everybody on our block, that, you know, our section of our street, I should say. I know where everybody falls in on our block. You know, that doesn't mean every block is going to be the same. There's going to be plenty of areas that are going to have a different opinion. But yes, we don't necessarily have to have all of this done by the 18th. We don't even have to have it done by probably 2 months from now, other than, as with anything, the longer you let it go, the more interest will wane. People will forget about it. You know, even if they've been beat up, and, you know, they're gonna eventually, those things fade as we move on to other things, as people get vaccines, as people go out and start enjoying life again. And so, certainly taking advantage of the next month, I think is a reasonable expectation to kind of go from there. As far as additional means that we can use to advertise and build support, we're doing as much of it as we can within the constraints of the existing technologies. The biggest problem is that not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's on Nextdoor, not everybody, even who lives in their house owns that house. In some cases, they're renters that live there, and they might even get the mail, but they aren't the ones who can make the decision for that lot. So, that's a complicating factor as well. The best means, I think, are going to be, sharing that information door to door, neighbor to neighbor. The signs are a great reminder. If you see one sign for something happening in a neighborhood, you kind of go, what was that? You see this, two signs that are identical for the same thing in the neighborhood, you might start to kind of look at it. If you drive down a block and you see five homes, going down a block, and they all have the same sign out front, you're going to start to, to have that interaction of, okay, well, what is this? I better go look, because this obviously is something more than just a minor, a minor tiff with the HOA, so to speak. But I think that what we need to do, is try and use all of those methodologies. We do need to respect people. So if somebody has a no soliciting sign, that's something we have to try and respect, because that's, there are plenty of people who would be frustrated, and, you want to make sure that they understand that, we don't specifically represent the HOA as in, officially through the board, but we certainly represent your neighbors that are just wanting to see, have you seen what the proposals are? And, have you seen, do you have any feelings on it? You haven't seen them? You know what? Is there a reason you haven't seen them? Because I would be willing to bet, and I'm sure Reed and I'm sure Stan will agree with me on this. The odds that everybody in this neighborhood, all 634 homes, have actually seen the proposed changes would be, if you could get those odds on the Super Bowl, you would place that bet a million times over a million, because there's just the odds that everybody has actually even been familiar with there are changes, because so much of this has been done online. I know that there are people in our neighborhood who don't have the means to see those communications, or the people who have the means to sign in on Zoom or any of these other sources. So yeah, our best efforts are at concentrating on coming up with some documentation to be able to share. We don't even have to have the list from the county to go door to door. There are ways to, to find out who lives there. At this point, it's more the informational campaign than any kind of, hey, give me your proxy vote. At this point, we need people to be aware of what's happening, and be informed on what the possible options are. So I would say, I know that, we've tried to communicate as best we can, and I seem to have found myself a full-time job in trying to keep up between Facebook and Nextdoor, and update our website, and schedule meetings, and call realtors, and it has become a full-time job, which I'm, at this point it works. And I think that that's something that, I certainly would be grateful for a little bit of help on some of that. As we go forward, though, I know, without signing into Facebook, somebody had produced a fairly nice looking flyer on Sunday or Monday, that it really looked good, that had Smokey the Bear in the corner. That was shared in our the Take Back the Neighborhood group. And it was kind of one of those, I had given some feedback and I have not reached out yet to see where we're at with that particular project, but that's on my list for tomorrow for sure. And I had some additional feedback from one or two other people that said, well, can we get written accounts from realtors, you know, expressing what the values should be realistically be expected to do, all things being equal, HOA versus non-HOA. And that is something that I am working to try and get some documentation on that so that there people can have a reasonable expectation as to all things being equal. Is there a difference or not? Is there any, you know, because if I've seen a lot of comments online where people have said, well, we need to keep the HOA. It's the only thing that keeps the neighborhood nice. And I've seen counter arguments of people saying, well, I have a $500,000 home. I don't need to be told not to live in a mess. So I see both sides of that particular conversation. And I think that as we go forth, you know, I definitely want to reach out to each and every one of you and just kind of keep these communication channels open and be able to, you know, share information and ideas. You know, feel free to email me. Feel free to hit me up on Facebook. Next door. It does not matter to me how you get a hold of me. If you have something, catch John or I. You know, talk with your other friends that you know are on the same side of the topic as you. You know, if it's one of those things that's doable, you know, we'll do everything we can in our power to make sure that every opportunity is made to help educate our neighbors, regardless of the outcome. So, am I missing anything else, John?
I think that's good. I think you've covered most everything.
No.
Hey, real quick, guys. If I'm not mistaken, we're supposed to give our feedback to the board for the CCNRs up until the 11th. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Up until the 11th, and then the webinar is on the 18th.
Okay. So Reed had mentioned that they found some things and he noted a couple of them. Are they going to send out a revision of those? Because it sounds like there might be more. We need to know all those, right, to give the feedback. So is that something they're going to read? If you're still on here, is there going to be something that goes out and explains this?
I do not know that answer. Apologize. We can find out and what the plan is for that. Jason, do you know?
I would say in the absence of any information, assume that I know that Stan posted on the JW Neighborhood Discussions group. There was a revisions document which was with some of the feedback that he was officially allowed to release at that point. So, you know, I would say probably use that as your starting point for that's going to be kind of where the situation sits at the moment, going forth to the 11th and then to the 18th. Does that help?
Yeah. Yep. That sounds like a good plan.
If you go back and look at Jordan Willow's HOA discussions Facebook group, Stan posted on February 6th at 4:18 p.m. A Google Docs link with some of the comments on the feedback that they have received to date at that time.
And what was that on again? Just the Facebook?
It's the Jordan Willow's HOA discussions group.
I wonder if we can get that posted on the other channels, just because because I don't have Facebook, but I have the next door or the website you guys have created.
I will be glad to post it even over onto the Disband the HOA website if Stan has no, you know, issues with that. I will go ahead and try and get that posted over. If not tonight, probably first thing in the morning then.
Stan just responded back with a go for it. Go ahead and post it on the website. So give us a few hours and we'll get it up there for you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys.
Yep, no worries. As for that, I know I'm going to reach out to who it was that had created the flyers that were posted on the one Facebook group, the Take Back the Neighborhood Facebook group, and see if they'd be willing, because they did it. If you've seen them, they look pretty awesome. See if we can modify those and make a couple different variants of it, and then if there you go, James Harris. Gosh, I could not think of the name. If you know, that's one of those. John and I have high-speed color laser printers. I can crank those things out in, you know, a whole ream of paper in probably 15 minutes or you know, 10 or 15 minutes with, you know, color imagery and even two-sided printing if need be. So I will reach out to James Harris and just try and go through and look at a couple of variants of things and see where we're at. Also, I am going to post video of this meeting tonight on our website, as well as on the Jordan Willows Take Back the Neighborhood Facebook group, so that those who were not able to be here tonight can go ahead and log in and you know, see what was discussed and try and be able to further their knowledge. Don't wait for me to do that. You know, if you're wanting to talk to other people, talk to others of your neighbors, please do so. Other than that, you know, if anybody wants to volunteer for any specific tasks, I'm more than happy to have the help. You know, this has been one of those, you know, as people have said, somehow I've seemed to be the one that organized all of the people. There are a lot of people who were already anti-HOA, combined with people who were frustrated with the way that the process went. And yeah, I'm not used to being the, you know, the person who's having to sit here on this side of the seat. I'm more like being on your side normally. And so, yeah, you know, any help I can, I will take any help I can get moving forward. You know, reach out to me, like I say, Facebook. I will, my email is posted also on the Disband the HOA website. So, you know, shoot me an email. And another thing that I am also working on is if we can start to amass enough email addresses that are freely given by people, I would be thrilled to put together a MailChimp mailing list or something similar that can help communicate any changes in the process from our side, or certainly, you know, if there's pertinent information from, you know, from the board's side that may need to be disseminated, you know, we can use that methodology to get that information out to everyone. So did anybody else have any other questions or feedback?
I'd just like to say thank you to you guys, Brandon and was it John?
Yep.
For spearheading this. I'm happy to help in any way I can. I was actually going to make a suggestion that, you know, if we do get these flyers and we go the mailing route, I don't know if it's illegal or not, but to wait for the mailman, and when he opens all those up, say, hey, do you mind if I throw this in and we can get a few volunteers to hit those mailboxes? I'd be happy to be one of those, and just stuff all those to avoid the cost of stamps. Because I mean, with over 600 houses, you're pushing up on $300 just to mail those. So I don't know, maybe that's an idea.
That's not a bad idea, really. I mean, that's.
It's quicker than canvassing. So
Yeah, my only question would be, you know, I would say it could theoretically border on unethical behavior just because you are not paying for postage.
The
My
USPS
wife-
frowns upon it. I don't think they'd go for it.
Yeah, it's kind of my general.
It's been a decade. It was illegal then.
okay.
My wife's family's big into the postal service, and they know it's illegal to do that. You
Okay.
can put it on the people's door posts, though. That works. Oh, and thanks, guys. Brandon, John, you guys are fantastic. I appreciate all your extra effort on this.
No worries.
Yeah, by the way.
No, I mean, you know, we're happy to do it. You know, it's just one of those, you know, that we can always function better as a group where there's you know, an organization to it, and trying to, you know, combine all of the voices into one. You can get a lot more done that way than you can with, you know, people blindly battering at the walls, so to speak. So, well, guys, I want to, you know, thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank Stan and Reed, you know, from our board for being here and taking part in the process, and you know, all the great information. You know, keep up on checking the website, check the, you know, the Facebook groups, check Nextdoor. You know, I'm gonna try and get one push update for that document that Stan had released about the revisions, and get that pushed up to the website, and a link on a blog post there, so that that's pretty front and center and people can get to it easy enough. And then other than that, and John just sent it to me, so that'll make it that much quicker. And then, yeah, you know, check tomorrow. We'll try and get everything all put together and make sure that, you know, that everybody can get the information that they need. I'm gonna look to maybe shoot for Thursday night, maybe for an additional follow on. If not Thursday night, maybe Saturday night. I know we're occupied Friday night, but try and see if we can get a follow on meeting and see where we're at in the process from there. So, you know, check and I'll try and keep making sure we get it posted for everyone. So. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for taking part in this discussion. And, you know, we certainly appreciate, you know, all sides of this. So you guys have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of it. Go watch the Jazz game. They just tipped off about half an hour ago, I think. You know, and yeah, we'll catch you on the flip side, and I'll post a meeting as soon as we've got it ready to go. So.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you, guys.